The late Steve Albini was an incredibly influential American musician and producer, best known for his raw and uncompromising approach to recording. As a member of the band Shellac, and previously Big Black, among others, Albini carved out a reputation through his uncompromising and abrasive sound, though he's probably best known for producing albums for artists like Nirvana, The Pixies, and PJ Harvey. Albini has always been incredibly outspoken, being a fierce and vitriolic critic, even for the bands he's produced for. His penchant for anti-mainstreamism and DIY ethos have made him a celebrated figure within both the punk and alternative music scenes, with a massive outpouring of tributes coming from musicians and fans alike following his unexpected death just last year. But despite his accolades and notoriety within the music world, some of Steve Albini's behaviour and actions over the years have been truly horrific, and the things that he's done and said that we'll be covering today are genuinely some of the most odious things I've ever come across. I truly mean that. One section of this video in particular is not for the faint-hearted. So today, I'm going to collate each and every one of Albini's many transgressions and expose him for what he really is, starting first with his unabashed usage of offensive racial slurs. The roots of Albini's flippant and egregious use of slurs start with his band Big Black and their debut EP, Lungs, which was an album assembled almost entirely by Albini himself. In the opening track, Steelworker, Albini used the word darkie to describe a black person in the line, "I've never hung a darkie, but I've fed one." Albini said in Mike Lazarad's book, Our Band Could Be Your Life, that the song was partially influenced by the racial divisions in Chicago at the time, and in the context of the song, it does appear that he was deliberately trying to be crass to accentuate the social strife and discrimination within the city at the time. At least in the first section of the song anyways, as you will see in this screen cap of the lyrics. However, the use of this term is still inappropriate and wholly unnecessary. It goes without saying that there is never really a place where it is acceptable to use such a disparaging slur. But even from a purely artistic perspective, the term is still totally uncalled for. It's not like Albini is playing an intentionally racist character within the song, to highlight the racial tensions in the city, for example. It appears instead that he is just saying the lyrics, "I've never hung a darkie, but I've fed one," purely for some juvenile attempt at shock humour. Albini did defend the use of the term in Our Band Could Be Your Life, saying that he used the word as a comical term in a way that's a play on the concept of a hateful word. Can a word that's so inherently hilarious be hateful? I don't know. Nevertheless, Albini went one further the next year, as in 1983, Albini said himself in a Spin magazine column piece that he was originally going to name Big Black's second EP, which was called Bulldozer, instead as Hey N-Word, Hard R and Everything. Fortunately, his bandmates forced him to change the title, but Albini was not happy with the decision, as quote, "Anyone stupid enough to be offended by that title is part of the problem. It's better to be confrontational about things like this." Now in my view, this is a totally benighted stance. Just because you're outwardly using incredibly offensive racial slurs purely for provocative reasons does not somehow make you an anti-racist who is intellectually above it all. It is needlessly transgressive and such an immature outlook. By trying to desensitize obviously racist terms in this way, all you are doing in fact is normalizing and preserving racial division through discourse, as making slurs like these commonplace would just serve to perpetuate the judgment and othering of people purely through the colour of their skin, rather than the content of their character. Furthermore, in a 1986 Forced Exposure magazine article, Albini said the line, "I don't give two splats of an old Negro's junkie's vomit for your political philosophical treatise," as apparently in their hierarchy of junkie vomit for Albini, the sick of a black person is the worst. Why is that, I wonder? And finally, after Big Black disbanded in the late 80s, Albini played in the short-lived band, horrifically named Run N-Word Run, which was a tagline apparently taken from a 1970s blaxploitation film. Now, some of you may still believe Albini is not actually being racist by using these offensive slurs so brazenly in the context of his music here, at least not by the traditional definitions of racism, as he is instead just being deliberately crude and edgy and crass for the sake of it, rather than inherently disliking someone because of their skin colour. Again, this doesn't justify his behaviour, but it is something that has to be stated. However, in a 2011 blog post on his own recording studio's online chat forum, electricalaudio.com, Albini was explicitly racist to a group of young black men, two of which will go on to be the Grammy Award-winning artists, Tyler the Creator and Frank Ocean. In the post, he went on a racialised tirade about Tyler's and Frank's former rap collective, Odd Future, talking at length about a shuttle bus journey departing from Barcelona's Primavera Festival, in which Albini, Odd Future, and many other artists were present. The post is rather long, so I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but I've screen capped the relevant part of the post for you to read. In short, Albini was extremely vexed with Odd Future's behaviour during the bus journey, as they allegedly arrived late and were acting extremely obnoxiously by provoking the bus driver, flipping off a woman, using inappropriate language, being overly loud, and just generally irritating everyone around them. But most importantly here though, Albini described the group as, quote, N-wording everything in sight, and he went on to use the M-word a further 3 times to describe the group's antics. Absolutely shocking and indefensible stuff here. Interestingly, despite Albini's alleged recounting of the group N-wording about, the then publicist of Odd Future, Heathcliff Beru, who was also present for the bus ride, recalled the event much differently. According to the Chicagoist.com, Beru believed that Albini was exaggerating as the group were just messing around. They were, quote, joking the entire time, and Albini never picked up on it. Regarding the claims that Odd Future and Tyler the Creator were supposedly being awful to everyone around them, Beru asserted that Tyler never harassed the driver. Beru was sitting up in the passenger seat next to Tyler, and Tyler may have asked for McDonald's once, which was a big crux of Albini's rancour against the group, as they were apparently pestering the bus driver for McDonald's. But Beru asserts he told Tyler and the group they were late and to keep it moving. Beru also noted that he never heard anyone drop racial slurs in the manner that Albini describes, and that flipping birds to female passengers doesn't make sense either. Tyler did in fact tweet about Albini's racist rant against himself and the rest of Odd Future, saying that, "Feel like I have to defend myself. 1. I don't know who the F Steve Albino is," which did get a laugh out of me. 2. I don't N-word everything in sight. And 3. I never say F you to bus drivers. In response to this, Albini doubled down on his blog post, more or less saying that he was not exaggerating anything he'd originally said. But Beru snapped back, saying that Albini was just plain lying. Though I cannot say for certain, it appears that Albini, may have at the least exaggerated his recollections of the event, or at worst, lied about his whole ordeal, which makes his racist diatribe even worse, as even though using the N-word with such sneering intolerance is already incredibly racist in itself, Albini seems to have embellished their supposed misbehaviours on what can only be the basis of their skin colour. If it had been a white group of people misbehaving, he would not have said they were N-wording about, nor crackering about, for instance. There is an inherent prejudice and predisposition against the group, purely because they are black, as in his account he condemns their behaviour by racialising their actions as N-wording everything in sight, rather than just chastising them on their conduct alone. It does not stop here with Albini's controversial remarks though. As well as frequently using racial slurs, Albini also had an appetite for incorporating homophobic language into his music. Particularly during his time with Big Black, Albini was well known for constantly cracking gay jokes on stage, which Albini defends in the Our Band Could Be Your Life book by saying, given how intermingled the gay and punk subcultures were, it was assumed by anyone involved that open-mindedness, if not free-form experimentation, was the norm. He continued, saying that, with that assumption under your belt, joke all you like. The F-slur isn't just a gay term, it's funny on its own, phonetically, like the words hockey puck, mucklucks, and Canada. Albini did certainly live up to his own credo on the usage of the F-slur though, seeing as in 1985, when he was in the aforementioned band Run, N-Word Run, he released a song titled Pray I Don't Kill You, F-slur. Though Albini's fondness for using homophobic language is inappropriate and clearly offensive, I must contend that its use in this context does not necessitate someone who is prejudiced on the grounds of sexuality. The gay jokes and the F-slur are being employed, very immaturely and tastelessly may I add, in a deliberately confrontational and almost self-satirising way, in the same manner a 14-year-old edgelord does on Twitter for example. I also must give credence to the fact that the F-slur was a much more prevalent and societally accepted insult back then, which again does not at all justify its usage here, but it is still a salient fact. However, Albini's puerile edginess got corrupted at some point into full-blown homophobia, as he made an utterly disgraceful comment in a Forced Exposure magazine article, saying in his 1991 review of the band Poster Children and their LP Flower Power that, quote, they had a really fruity drummer for a while, but I think he died of the sif. Rotten stuff, but we are far from done with Albini yet. So, in 1987, Steve Albini formed the hideously named band Grape Man with David Wim and Ray Washam following the dissolution of Big Black, and I will have to continue saying the band name in this way so the video stays up. The title of the band obviously doesn't start with the letter G. Albini said the name was taken from the Japanese manga series The Grape Man. The name of the manga was certainly no metaphor though, and its premise is disgusting, so be prepared. So, the main character is a school teacher in the day, but by night he dispenses his own perverted sense of justice as the Grape Man under his business, Grape Man Services, whose motto is righting wrongs through penetration. Clients call the R-Man to handle cases like getting revenge over a jilted lover, or subduing annoying co-workers. There are more sordid details of the manga on Wikipedia, but I just can't read them on here, but they somehow make the plot even more repulsive. So, why on earth did Albini name his band after something so abominably bad? Well, Albini said he discovered the manga through a friend, and he found its combination of grape fantasies and the superhero genre simultaneously utterly repellent and fascinating. He described it as the product of decades of repression and misogyny being expressed through a different cultural tradition. This is not even defensible under the banner of Albini being a confrontational, immature edgelord like before, even though he was 25 at this time and far too old to be excused for doing that sort of stuff. The whole thing is wretched. In what world is a comic about a man essaying others in the worst way possible something that is, quote, fascinating or a vivid cultural expression? How twisted are you? In truth, I don't need to pull apart this any further, as the whole premise is so obviously abhorrent. Now, Albini did express some regret over the name some 30 years later, saying it was a flippant choice, and he likened it to getting a bad tattoo.
Like, it was a flippant choice that we made at the time, and it's unconscionable. It's indefensible.
There's not much to be said for what you can do for the legacy of that, huh?
Well, I mean, it's like getting a really awful tattoo. I did that.
Right.
But this is far too little and far too late. But Albini clearly has a fondness for this type of thing, as you'll see next. Going back to Albini's days with the band Big Black, as part of the band's 1985 debut LP, Atomizer, Albini wrote and chiefly composed the song Jordan, Minnesota. The song is a somewhat satirising but incredibly disturbing take on the Jordan, Minnesota scandal. What was this scandal though? Well, the Jordan, Minnesota incident was a massive sexual abuse scandal in the mid-80s in the small rural town of Jordan, Minnesota, which made national headlines at the time. Whilst 24 adults were charged with abusing 37 children in the worst ways possible, some of which including their own preschool-aged kids, only James Rudd, who was a previously convicted child predator, was actually sentenced. I don't have the time to discuss the case at length, but in short, the scandal is often attributed to mass conservative hysteria, and I think it's quite comparable to Pizzagate in terms of the mania surrounding it. However, there was certainly more veracity to the Jordan, Minnesota scandal than with Pizzagate, and I'm far from a Pizzagate denier as well. Depraved things did happen in Jordan, but the extent of such was certainly fabricated. Anyways, as noted, Albini created a song around the scandal, and his take is, as I've already said, disturbing. The song opens with Albini screeching the words "ow" and "ugh" in a high-pitched voice. Which is meant to emulate the young victims in Jordan, and he repeats these screeching sounds again after chanting, "This is Jordan, we do what we like." Albini follows up by repeating the lyrics, "Stay with me, my 5-year-old, stay with me, play hide and seek," and that this will stay with you until you die. The high-pitched shrieks then make another return, plus a repeat of the "stay with you" line. Albini finishes off by repeating this underlined line several times, of which I'm not going to read out for very obvious reasons. Even if this song is meant to be a satirising lampooning of moral panic, it is beyond disgusting and an utterly appalling performance. Whether children were being abused in Jordan or not, mocking the abuse of kids as young as 2 years old is disgraceful behaviour. On what planet is imitating a child's whimpers or role-playing as a child predator amusing or tasteful? This is woefully bad and completely indefensible. But as terrible as this is, the lyrics, in my opinion, aren't actually the worst part about this song. In fact, when Albini used to play the song live with his bandmate Santiago Durango contended in Our Band Could Be Your Life that Albini would perform an intense pantomime as though he were one of the children, being, well, R-worded. Foul stuff. But this topic leads on to the next and final topic of the video, which, be prepared, is truly sickening, and I mean that. So, to say it as bluntly as possible, Steve Albini was a self-admitted admirer of CP, who openly promoted said CP in language so nauseating that I felt criminal just for reading it when researching this video. I will have to censor a lot of this, but I will make it so it is still legible for you to understand exactly what this sicko said. We'll start with Albini's big black tour diary piece in the music magazine Forced Exposure, which is from the winter 1988 issue of the magazine. So, what you're going to see now is a censored quote from the article, which is about Albini buying CP in Hamburg, Germany. You will have to read it for yourself, and I'll give you some time to do so. This was not an isolated incident though. Albini wrote an even more vile piece promoting the Pure magazine made by his lifelong friend and convicted CP producer and distributor Peter Sotos. The article is also from the Forced Exposure magazine, being from the summer 1985 issue this time. Here are the relevant and wretched quotes for you. Albini's and Peter Sotos' relationship runs even more deeper than this promotion though, as Albini produced an album for Sotos called Buyer's Market in 1992, which was essentially a sound collage of spoken word samples from parents, law enforcement officers, and victims of sex crimes, many of which being underage children. And I think it's important to note that Albini and Sotos were close buddies up until Albini's death just last year, as Albini continued to speak about Sotos in an incredibly warm light, even following his imprisonment for CP charges. For instance, when Albini was asked about his relationship with Sotos in a 2012 Reddit AMA, Albini said that Peter's an old friend. I've known him for 30 years or so. I'll help him do whatever he wants to do, from wash his car to edit his album. Also, in the same 2011 blog post that contained Albini's racialised tirade against Odd Future from before, Albini said, Peter Sotos is a lovely fellow whom I trust implicitly, despite his writing evoking a truly primal disgust in me. Further, in a 2021 interview, he said, "There's a friend of mine, Peter Sotos, who's written extensively about abuse and murder and things of that nature." In conclusion, I will not dispute Steve Albini's immense musical talent, and I will likewise not dispute that it is at least somewhat possible to separate the art from the artist. A lot of great art has been made by truly evil people. However, the point of this video today is to make you think twice about venerating Albini as an underground icon. He may have been an innovative, influential, and uber-talented musician, creating some of my genuinely favourite songs ever, like Passing Complexion and Bad Penny for example, but he was certainly not a great person. Far, far from it. Clearly, one cannot jail dead people, but that does not mean it's not important to know about these things. All I ask of you today is that you try to retain this information as best as you can, particularly regarding his racist diatribe against our future, his fondness and fascination for sexual violence, and his visceral indulgence and promotion of CP, and that you share this information with anyone who blindly eulogizes Albini as a saint, as not many people seem to be aware of his truly awful antics over the years. So, thank you for watching today. Please like if you enjoyed the video, and leave a comment if you've got anything at all you'd like to say, whatever your take, and I'll do my best to respond to all of you. I also have a lot of videos similar today already on the channel, including exposés on Iggy Pop, Anthony Kiedis, David Bowie, Björk, and the Scorpions, all of which I'll leave links to in the comment section below, or you can alternatively find them in the video description or on the channel page. And finally, always remember to subscribe to the Sing Swan Song.